What's up, friends? Welcome back to the Pack a Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. Thanks so much for joining me today. Always appreciate it. I know yesterday we had a little bit fun with a Jordan Love for Baker Mayfield trade conversation. We'll get a little bit more serious today. So let's jump in right away and talk about a potential Aaron Rodgers for Jimmy Garoppolo. I'm just kidding. Let's jump into our main topic. We will go over what I consider sort of the state of the offense address, if you will. What I want to sort of accomplish with this is go over the state of the Packers offense, sort of review what transactions have taken place during this offseason, who's in, who's out, the coaching changes, things like that. And maybe most importantly, look at it position by position and see, all right, do the Packers have enough at this given position to win a Super Bowl? So we'll discuss all of that. So let's start off with some of the changes, who's in, who's out. I think it shouldn't go unnoticed that Nathaniel Hackett and Luke Getsy are gone from this Packers offense. You have the pieces that you need clearly in a Matt LaFleur and an Adam Stenavich to be very successful from a coaching staff standpoint. I don't think there's any doubts over Matt LaFleur's offense, his play calling ability. There have been a couple hiccups here and there, but he's been a phenomenal offensive mind, a phenomenal coach, a phenomenal game planner. Needs to do better in the playoffs. I don't think there's any question about that. But overall, I think there's still a ton of confidence there. And I think being able to retain Adam Stenavich, not only as an offensive line mind, but just as an offensive mind in general, I think they did really well to be able to maintain or really retain his services, even with Hackett and Getsy leaving. I'm not going to go over every move here. Of course, there were some other coaching changes as well. There's some lower tier free agents and draft picks and undrafted guys that we're not going to discuss. But the big loss here is Luke Getsy and Nathaniel Hackett, two coordinators and coaches who had a ton of say in third down play calling and game planning, in red zone game planning. So those are not insignificant losses. Getsy, of course, goes to the Bears as their offensive coordinator, and Nathaniel Hackett goes to the Broncos as their head coach. Adam Stenavich steps in for the Packers as their offensive coordinator. Gone from a player's standpoint, Davante Adams, MVS, Dennis Kelly, Billy Turner, Lucas Patrick. So not exactly some insignificant losses there. In comes Sammy Watkins, Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, Sean Ryan, Zach Tom, again, some other Rasheed Walker, Samori Toure, things like that. But those are the main players who are in place of those players and just added depth to the offense, etc. So out Getsy and Hackett, in Stenavich, out Davante Adams, MVS, Dennis Kelly, Billy Turner, Lucas Patrick, in Watkins, Watson, Dobbs, Ryan, and Tom. All right. So before we get any further, I think it's safe to say that just based on those moves alone, if taken at face value, Green Bay clearly got worse on offense, right? I'm not saying that they can't be as good overall. I'm not saying that they can't be a better offense. I'm not saying they can't win a Super Bowl. I'm not saying they can't be one of the best offenses in the league. But from a pure personnel standpoint, on the surface, we'll get to more on that in just a moment, but on the surface, you lose Davante Adams, MVS, Dennis Kelly, Billy Turner, and Lucas Patrick. Replace Davante and MVS with Sammy Watkins and rookies, and replace Kelly, Turner, and Patrick with two rookies, or three rookies, I guess, if you want to add Rasheed Walker as a 7th-round pick. You're not going to be better from a talent standpoint. Now, there's a lot of other ways that they can get better. Players returning from injury, players taking a step from rookie to second year, second to third year, etc. They could have found a diamond in the rough in Watkins, or any of their rookies this year could way outperform expectations. It's not to say that inherently they don't have the pieces or that they couldn't have found pieces that are going to fit those spots in just a different way, right? So this is not a doom and gloom situation, but I think you would be hard pressed to find anyone that would make a pure argument to say that just based on those transactions, the Packers now have more talent on offense than they had a season ago. They might be deeper at certain positions. They might have, different sort of players that they can fit in and do things with. But it would be very hard pressed to say that they are now better, especially after losing a couple coaches and especially after losing guys like specifically Davante and MVS, that this offense is now all of a sudden going to be more talented than they were a season ago. Now, we'll get into at the end why I don't think we can just take this at a surface level comparison. But before we get there, I want to sort of go position by position. And even with the losses of Devontae and MVS and some of the coaches, do the position groups in and of themselves have enough talent? And how does that talent sort of stack up? So we'll start with quarterback for obvious reasons, but I sort of went over this a little bit the other day as well. But at quarterback, you would ideally love to have a alpha quarterback that's your key guy. You would love to have a backup who can come in and go 3-3 in a 6-game stretch if you need it. And you would love to have a developmental guy that could be a potential starter down the road. And Green Bay has two of those things very much. They have their alpha. They have arguably the best player in all of football, the reigning 2-time MVP at quarterback in Aaron Rodgers. Major check mark there. They have the developmental guy. How far he develops and what he becomes is still a major mystery box / question mark, but they have the developmental guy. The question only here would be, do they have the backup quarterback that's capable of going 3-3 if your starter misses 6 games? And not a lot of teams have that. And having a Jordan Love in that situation who has the talent and the potential isn't the worst case to go in that scenario. I would rather have that as your backup than, paying $10 million to a guy who, even if he comes in a situation like that, is still going to be hard pressed to go 3-3. Like, just give me Jordan Love. He can be the potential guy. He can be the backup. And ultimately, if you're down Aaron Rodgers for any period of time, you're basically screwed probably anyway. So I'm very good with this. Clearly, this is a very good quarterback room overall. Now, Danny Etling is a major question mark as your number 3, basically a camp arm. Can he win a practice squad spot? I still think that maybe they add another quarterback before the start of training camp. We'll have to sort of wait and see here. Maybe they wait until the CFL is over and grab one of those guys. Maybe they wait until, who knows what else. But overall, I would still maybe expect another quarterback to be added to this room and some competition there for Danny Etling, if nothing else. But you feel very good about this quarterback room as a whole. And it just starts and ends with Aaron Rodgers as the MVP and then sort of the mystery box that is Jordan Love. So overall, in my opinion, you have a true number 1, you have a number 2, and then that number 3 developmental guy, I'm not sure it's exactly what you're looking for in Danny Etling, but he has some interesting upside. And if he's your practice squad guy, and if that's what you're worried about at the position, you don't have that much to be worried about at the end of the day, right? So I think the clear answer is they're doing more than fine. And yes, you can very clearly win a Super Bowl with this quarterback group. So I would argue that they have a 1, a 2, and a 4. I would say Danny Etling's more of like a deep practice squad quarterback at this point. But overall, major check mark that they can say they have exactly what they need at quarterback to go into this season. Let's transition to running back. If you listened to my podcast the other day, you know that I had running back as the Packers' best position group. And the reason is the top 2 running backs, but also some of the depth. Aaron Jones is a number 1 running back. A.J. Dillon is a number 1 running back. I value Kylan Hill when healthy as a number 2 running back. I think Patrick Taylor is a number 3 running back. And then I think you have 2 developmental practice squad running backs in Tyler Goodson and B.J. Baylor, who I think can both be good practice squad running backs that could develop into rotational pieces into the future. So that is a gorgeous running back room when you think of it. Not only do you have 2 1s, a 2, a 3, and 2 good developmental practice squad guys that are rookies. Not only that, but this running back room balances itself very, very well also. So you've got your sort of more, agile, jukey, big play running back, can be a receiver out of the backfield in Aaron Jones. And then you've got your bulky, run up the middle, run guys over, A.J. Dillon. I don't think this is a true, thunder and lightning situation. It sort of has that connotation, but I think both of these guys are overall running backs. Aaron Jones can get you the tough yards, and A.J. Dillon can also run outside and pass catch and do all those sort of things as well. So both of them are overall running backs, but you have the shiftier guy and the power guy, right? They balance each other very well. Even the backups, Kylan Hill is more your Aaron Jones replacement. Patrick Taylor is more your A.J. Dillon replacement. Even there, you're a bit more balanced. So I really like the overall stable of running backs that Green Bay has. I think they balance well. I think you complement each other well. And it just is a very deep overall running back room, especially if Kylan Hill can get back and healthy sooner rather than later. So yes, this is a very good running back room. And clearly, in my opinion, this is a running back room that can win a Super Bowl. All right. The big question mark here is the wide receiver room. And how I would define these wide receivers. I think Lazard can still be a number 2. Ideally, he is a good number 2 when you have a alpha true number 1. And then you can, like, if you've got Devontae Adams, then yeah, Allen Lazard can be your number 2, right? If you don't have that 1, then Lazard as your 2 gets a little bit more iffy. But I still think Lazard can be a good number 2 wide receiver in this league. And I'm just saying, like, in general, if you're looking like across the league, how would you label these wide receivers? I think Sammy Watkins is more of a number 3 or a number 4. I think Randall Cobb at this point is more of a number 3, number 4. I think probably Christian Watson to begin with is probably more of a number 3, number 4. I think Amari Rodgers is more probably a developmental number 5 at this point until he chooses or shows something different. Maybe even a developmental number 6 for Rodgers. I think Dobbs would be that developmental 5 or 6 until he shows he's capable of more. I think Torrey would be your developmental 6 sort of guy. I think Winfrey can be a 5 or a 6. I think Malik Taylor would be more of like a special teams number 6 wide receiver. I think Danny Davis is a practice squad guy. So overall, outside of Danny Davis, you have 9 guys, in my opinion, that at least are like 53-man roster number 6 or better wide receivers. That is a lot of wide receivers that are at least capable of some capacity of being a number 6 wide receiver or being a 53-man roster player or better. The question mark is the top end of that. If you don't have your true number 1, and this really is more of like a 2, a 3, a 4, a 3/4, a 5/6, a 5/6, a 6, a 5/6. Like, if that's your room, you don't really have that top tier guy. And I don't think I'm breaking any news for anyone here, but I do wonder, and I've said this in the past, is who steps up to be that guy on the key third downs, on your down by 7, need a touchdown, end of the game situations. Rodgers is going to make up for a lot of that. And I think you can be better in other areas, and they're going to need contributions from Tunyon and DeGuara and maybe even a Tyler Davis, Aaron Jones, A.J. Dillon, maybe even a Kylan Hill. They're going to need contributions from those sort of players to take some of the burden because they don't have that key alpha number 1 wide receiver. Now, maybe Watson develops quicker. Maybe Dobbs is a revelation in the late rounds. Maybe Amari Rodgers takes a major step. Maybe Sammy Watkins finds the fountain of youth and finds the perfect offense for him, like Devondre Campbell and Rasul Douglas found the perfect defense for them a season ago. If we were having this conversation at inside linebacker a season ago, we would have been saying, you know what, they just don't have that alpha at inside linebacker. You know, they've got a Chris Barnes as sort of a developmental guy. And then we would have talked about all the other special teams, you know, the Ty Summers, the Isaiah McDuffies and things like that, right? Well, unbeknownst to us, even though he had more of a meh career up until that point, Devondre Campbell was an all-pro. So you just never know. But as this point, as we're talking here on June 29th, I don't think they have that number 1 wide receiver. Now, what I will say is I do like some of the balance of this overall wide receiver group as well. Not too dissimilar to the running back. The running back says 2 number 1s, the wide receiver doesn't. But I like the fact that Allen Lazard is more your possession wide receiver. Sammy Watkins is a possession wide receiver. But then you've got Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs, who can be more of your outside potential deep threat wide receivers. You've got Cobb and Amari Rodgers and maybe even Toure, who can be more of your slot type wide receivers. Christian Watson and Amari Rodgers bring more of a gadget element to your offense. You have different wide receivers who have different body types, who can do different things, who have different speeds, who have different everything, right? And I think if there's any coordinator and quarterback who can take advantage of what do these specific wide receivers do well and almost platoon those wide receivers to get done what you need to get done, I do think that it's a Matt LaFleur and a Aaron Rodgers at, sort of play caller and coach to lead that group of wide receivers. So I do think this wide receiver group is balanced enough. Whether or not they are good enough to win a Super Bowl might be the number 1 question that is facing this entire team going into this season. Do they have enough weapons? Do they have enough playmakers? I have concerns about those third down situations. I have concerns as to whether or not they have enough guys who, if you get the ball in their hands, they can make plays on their own, and it's not just Aaron Rodgers having to do the heavy lifting. And once again, we go on the grind of having to do a bunch of 15-play, 85-yard drives that it just takes perfection in order to get into the end zone. So I do have some questions and concerns, but I do think this group can be better than people are expecting. And I do think overall, with the weapons on this offense in total, and hopefully an improved offensive line, that they still can get the job done. But I think that is the big question. Maybe the most intriguing and interesting aspect of the wide receiver position, I can't quantify this. This is just my feel, and it's just my feel as of today. I would argue that there was more buzz and attention surrounding the Packers' weapons the last couple years when they had Davante Adams and MVS and Randall Cobb and Alan Lazard and Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon and Mercedes Lewis and Robert Tonyan. There was more conversation in those years of like, does Green Bay have enough weapons? They haven't gotten weapons for Aaron Rodgers. Than there has been this year after losing Davante Adams and MVS and clearly drafting some rookies and getting Sammy Watkins. But it almost feels like the same people that were like screaming about it and be like, Aaron Rodgers doesn't have enough weapons, are now like saying they have enough weapons and it's not just about wide receivers. Like they're going to run the ball more. It's going to be Dillon and Jones, and they're going to utilize their tight ends, and Robert Tonyan is back. And it's just weird to me. I don't have any other commentary other than that. It just is weird to me that it seemed, and it's just me personally, it seemed like there were more people yelling that Aaron Rodgers needed weapons when they had a Davante Adams and an MVS and the rest of this basically same group. And now when those guys are gone, it's like, they still have Aaron Rodgers and good running backs and they'll be fine. Again, no other commentary other than it just seems weird to me. We'll see what happens here. I think this is, again, one of the huge conversations and huge question marks heading into the season is who takes that number one role. I think, let's just say they had Davante Adams still at this point, right? If you go into the season with Adams as your 1, Lazard as your 2, Cobb as your 3, Watson as your 4, Dobbs as your 5, Amari Rodgers as your 6, like everything feels really good within there, right? Like you have no major concerns of the state of your wide receiver roster, but not having that number 1 just feels like everyone else is slightly out of position. And now you've got a 2 playing 1, a 3 playing a 2, a 4 playing a 3, and then rookies and developmental guys taking the rest of the spots. So we'll see. I think it is a question mark though. Tight end, I feel relatively good about. I think Robert Tonyan, when healthy, is a number 1 tight end. I think Mercedes Lewis is the best blocking tight end in football. I think DeGuara can be sort of your situational H-back, fullback, sometime tight end, sometime slot type guy doing a variety of different things. I think Tyler Davis is a great developmental tight end. I think you have Dominique Daphne as a special team / probably better fullback / H-back than I think DeGuara is. I don't think he can quite do some of the slot stuff and the tight end stuff like DeGuara can, but I actually think he's a better fullback / H-back than DeGuara is. So I think you have the pieces that you need to be successful there. Once again, you're lacking that high end, just do everything and be your alpha tight end. I think Tonyan's not far off when healthy, but I think you're lacking that overall number, like clear, far and away number 1. There's just not many of those in the league. But overall, I feel good about this tight end group. Once again, I think as a weapons group as a whole, if you had that alpha at wide receiver, then again, the rest of those wide receivers fall into place. The tight ends look good. The running backs look good. It just feels like they're missing one key playmaker on offense, and whether that's at wide receiver, tight end, etc. I think that's the one piece that feels missing. But had they had that key guy at wide receiver, I think this tight end group really positions itself well. Overall, I still think there may be a playmaker short, but I like this tight end room, and I think Matt LaFleur has everything at his disposal, and I do think they can win a Super Bowl with this tight end group. So no concerns there, and again, really keeping an eye on Tyler Davis as a developmental player there. Offensive tackle, David Bakhtiari and Elton Jenkins, if they're healthy and they both end up playing at offensive tackle, Jenkins would be the question mark there. Does he kick back and guard, or does he play right tackle? If Bakhtiari and Jenkins are your tackles, you feel like you have probably the best tandem of tackles in all of football. You have Yash Nijman as a swing guy. You have Cole Van Landen as an intriguing developmental number 4. You've got Rasheed Walker as a 7th round pick, fringe roster / practice squad guy. Caleb Jones is one of the most unique and interesting body types that they took a flyer on, probably a potential practice squad guy this season. And then you still have guys like Sean Ryan, Zach Tom, and Royce Newman who can also play tackle in a pinch. Love that group when healthy. Think that's one of the best tackle groups in football when healthy, and I love the versatility that group has. Definitely think when healthy, and if healthy, they can win a Super Bowl with that group. Offensive guard, John Runyon Jr., really like. Royce Newman is a fringe starting guard in my opinion. Hopefully he takes a step. Jake Hansen can play that Lucas Patrick sort of role, I think. They got a developmental guy in Sean Ryan, developmental guy in Zach Tom, and then George Moore as a potential practice squad guy. They also have Elton Jenkins who can kick inside, Cole Van Lannon who can kick inside, so they have some versatility there as well. Overall, I think this is a group that's good enough. I think, especially with Elton Jenkins being able to kick inside if you absolutely needed someone, I think it's good enough. I think John Runyan Jr. can take a step, but I think this group is probably dependent on the step that Royce Newman takes, or that Sean Ryan, if Sean Ryan's ready to come in and contribute right away. If they can get a solid starter out of either Newman or Ryan or Zach Tom this upcoming season, you're really good. If Ryan and Tom aren't ready and Newman doesn't take a step, then you've got some question marks. But I do expect Runyan to take another step forward, and he will sort of be the anchor of that guard group. And then center, Josh Myers, Jake Hansen, Zach Tom, Michael Manette, Cole Schneider, Elton Jenkins could kick there if you absolutely need him to. A lot of this is dependent upon Josh Myers and just how good he can be in his second season. Jake Hansen, as mentioned, kind of fills that Lucas Patrick swing guard center role. Zach Tom is an interesting player at center, and I think that ultimately might be his best position. Cole Schneider was one of my favorite undrafted guys. Michael Manette's an interesting wild card. So overall, I think they have enough there. And I do believe that if Myers can take that step, they can win a Super Bowl with that as well. So overall in offense, I feel great about quarterback, great about running back, good about tight end, great about tackle, and then sort of okay/good about the interior of the offensive line. Wide receiver remains that big question mark, and that might be the position of all positions on this roster that you have to beg the question, can they win a Super Bowl with the group that they have at wide receiver? Overall, they've got the MVP of the league at quarterback. They've got 2 starting caliber running backs. You return David Bakhtiari, Elton Jenkins, Robert Tonyan, Kylan Hill. You're expecting improvement from Josh Myers and Royce Newman, Amari Rodgers. You get Sammy Watkins in free agency. You draft Romeo Doubs, Christian Watson, Samori Toure, Sean Ryan, Zach Tom, Rasheed Walker. I think Josiah DeGuara and Tyler Davis still present a decent amount of potential at tight end. You've got some wild card / players where the talent is there, and if all of a sudden something clicks, you might have more than you think in Juwan Winfrey, Patrick Taylor, Jake Hansen, Cole Van Lannon. So I like the state of this Packers offense. I think a lot of teams would love to have what Matt LaFleur has at his disposal. And I think if you go back to that 49ers game, I know they lost that game, and I know the offense was crap in that game, but that was an offense and a team that most people were expecting could win a Super Bowl. They didn't have MVS in that game. They didn't have David Bakhtiari. They didn't have Elton Jenkins. A.J. Dillon gets hurt in that game. They didn't have Robert Tonyan. They clearly didn't have their rookies or Sammy Watkins. So what do they lose from that game? They lose Devontae Adams. They lose Lucas Patrick. They lose Dennis Kelly. They lose, Billy Turner. But what would you rather have ultimately at the end of the day? Like, again, that offense people were expecting was going to be good enough to win a Super Bowl, even without all of those players I just mentioned. Would you rather have Devontae Adams and a couple okay offensive linemen, or would you rather have David Bakhtiari, Elton Jenkins, A.J. Dillon, Robert Tonyan, Christian Watson, and Sammy Watkins? Even though that if you look at those initial transactions and you clearly say they lost Devontae and MVS and some good offensive linemen and tried to replace them with Watkins and Watson and some rookies. If you look at that, you clearly say the offense got a lot worse and they lost some really good coaches as well. But if you look at it as when they were competing and still playing good offense towards the end of the season, and when they were expected to win a Super Bowl, all they really lost was Devontae Adams and a couple decent offensive linemen. And now coming back, hopefully, are David Bakhtiari, Elton Jenkins, A.J. Dillon, Robert Tonyan, and then now you added guys like Watson and Doubs and Sammy Watkins. I think the offense can be better. Now, there's going to be injuries this season as well, so, obviously. But I think you can say that this group as a whole could be better than what the offense was at the time when they were expected to win a Super Bowl or at least compete for a Super Bowl a season ago. Love the state of the offense. Think they're probably missing one playmaking piece still, but they have enough pieces that I'm intrigued by that could fill that role, that I still think this can be a very good overall offense that beats you in a variety of different ways. And Matt LaFleur has a bunch of different ingredients and chess pieces at his disposal that he will use and Aaron Rodgers will use to the absolute best of their abilities. That does it for me today. I'll be right back here tomorrow with the state of the Packers defense. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.